The next several hours unfolded in an unrelenting sequence of specialized tests and treatments. The specialist worked with steadfast focus, ordering examinations Brian Russell had never even heard of. Each result was scrutinized with unwavering precision, leaving no detail overlooked. "There's something we're missing," the doctor murmured, almost to himself. Brian stood nearby, watching every subtle movement of the specialist, his own eyes searching for a glimmer of hope in the man's expression. The other doctors monitored Melissa Collins's condition with equal intensity, their faces etched with grave seriousness. Around them, the machines emitted a rhythmic, grim soundtrack, marking the passage of time like a relentless metronome. "How much longer must we wait?" Brian asked, his voice betraying the unease he usually kept hidden. "Is there anything we can do?" The specialist looked up, his face drawn with concern. The sight sent a chill through Brian. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught him to read people, and the doctor's tense demeanor was deeply unsettling. Holding a set of trembling papers, the specialist walked over. His typically calm gaze was shadowed by something ominous. "In my 30 years of practice," he began, carefully choosing his words, "I've never encountered a symptom pattern like this." Brian's stomach churned. He leaned against the wall, his legs threatening to buckle under the weight of the doctor's words. The specialist continued, his tone heavy and deliberate. "There's an unexpected complication," he explained, holding up the test results. "It's something our usual procedures didn't account for." The hallway seemed to chill, as though a cold wind had swept through. "How much time?" Brian asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The words sounded foreign, even to himself. "How long does she have?" The specialist adjusted his glasses, a motion that felt more like a delaying tactic than necessity. "It's not really about time," he said finally, his tone carrying a gravity that made the air in the room feel heavier. "It's about what we're facing in the background." Meanwhile, Mia Collins was being led through the sterile, echoing hallways of the police station. Her small wrists were bound in handcuffs that felt unbearably heavy. The dried trails of tears on her face reflected her exhaustion, yet a spark of determination still burned in her wide, anxious eyes. The officers guiding her ignored her broken voice. "Please," she rasped, her throat raw from crying. "Can someone just call the hospital? I need to know about my mom." The booking process felt endless and cruel. Each question, every photograph taken, and the slow, deliberate process of fingerprinting chipped away at the precious time she longed to spend at her mother's side. The harsh fluorescent light stung her eyes, but nothing stung more than the tears she struggled to hold back. One call she whispered hoarsely to each passing officer, "I just need to know if she's okay," but no one acknowledged her plea. The holding cell was cold and unwelcoming, with its concrete bench pressed against a wall and a tiny, barred window near the ceiling. Mia sat quietly, her thoughts consumed by Melissa. "Stay strong for her," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. "You have to." Back in the hospital, Melissa stirred restlessly in her bed. Feverish heat radiated from her as she mumbled disjointed fragments of thoughts. From the doorway, Brian watched the scene unfold, his body taut with tension. "How will I work like this?" Melissa asked, her voice breaking with emotion. "How will I take care of my daughter?" "Miss Melissa," Brian said softly, stepping closer. "I promise you won't need to worry about that." Before Melissa could respond, her fragmented speech grew more frantic. Her pale cheeks turned crimson as her heart monitor began beeping wildly. Beads of sweat formed on her brow, and she murmured incoherent phrases about black-winged angels dancing above her. Temperatures rising fast, a nurse called out urgently. "Her fever is spiking." Mia's voice echoed in her memory, even though she was absent. In the present, Jenny instinctively stepped back in alarm. Why is she talking like that? She would have cried if present. The room erupted in chaos. Melissa's words swung from clear statements to fevered delirium. She described stairways to heaven and frozen butterflies landing on her immobile legs. The specialist's expression shifted slightly, a faint glimmer of optimism appearing amidst the concern. "Why are you smiling?" Brian demanded, his sharp eyes catching the subtle change in the doctor's face. "This fever," the specialist replied, "might be exactly what we needed." As the medical team worked to stabilize Melissa, the specialist explained his reasoning. "It could mean her immune system is actively responding to the treatment," he said. "It's like a battle within her body." Brian processed the words as though they were lifelines. Melissa's suffering, though unbearable to witness, might signify a turning point. "Her body's army is fighting back," the specialist continued, glancing at the monitors. "Now, we need to support her as much as we can." In a different part of the city, Mia clung desperately to hope, unaware that her mother's fever could be the breakthrough they had been waiting for. As Melissa's fever surged, her hallucinations grew more vivid. She sang haunting lullabies, reached toward unseen figures, and called out for her parents, long departed. "Don't leave me," she cried, twisting in the bed, her face contorted with distress. "The snakes, they're squeezing me," she whispered feverishly, her voice trembling as though she were locked in another realm. Mia, her small hands trembling, tried to push through to her mother. "I have to help her," she pleaded, but Brian held her back firmly, his expression a mix of worry and restraint. A nurse hurried into the room, clutching the latest blood test results. The specialist crossed the room with swift urgency, scanning the paper with an increasingly grim expression. "What now?" Brian asked, his voice low and weighted with dread. "I need lab confirmation," the doctor replied evasively, already heading toward the door. Meanwhile, Melissa's fevered mumbling mirrored the frantic rhythm of the monitors. She spoke of fiery flowers sprouting from her paralyzed legs, their burning petals leaving no visible mark but searing her nonetheless. Hours dragged by before the fever began to ease. The once frantic monitors recorded a steady drop in Melissa's temperature. Temperatures dropping, the nurse confirmed, her tone a mix of relief and caution. Finally back to normal. As soft daylight filtered through the blinds, Melissa's eyes fluttered open. Gone was the fever's wild, unfocused gaze, replaced by clarity and awareness. Mia leaned over her, her face alight with hope and relief. Brian stood nearby, his presence steady yet hesitant, as though afraid to break the fragile calm. "How are you feeling?" the specialist asked, his voice calm but inquisitive, as he shone a small light into Melissa's eyes. "Different," she replied, her voice raspy and uncertain. "There's something strange in my legs." The room grew tense as the specialist began sensitivity tests. Suddenly, Melissa gasped, her face streaked with tears. "I felt it," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with emotion. "Doctor, I felt it." Each restored sensation brought new tears and tentative smiles. Hope, though cautious, began to fill the room. The specialist scribbled furiously in his notes, his excitement barely concealed. "The experimental treatment," he murmured, "it seems the fever amplified its effect." "Does this mean she'll walk again?" Mia asked, her voice bright with unrestrained hope. Encouraged by the newfound sensations, Melissa attempted to move, yet her muscles faltered and frustration clouded her features. Though she could feel the touch, her legs refused to respond fully. "Why can't I move properly?" she asked, her voice edged with despair. "Stay calm," the specialist advised gently. "Regaining sensation is the first step. This will take time." A team of physiotherapists soon arrived, assessing her progress with measured precision. "It's like a map," the lead therapist explained, pointing to her notes. "Some areas are returning, but others still need time to heal." "How much time?" Brian finally voiced the question that hung heavily in the room. His voice was steady, but carried a thread of urgency. Melissa's determination ignited. "I'm not waiting," she declared. With the therapist's help, she managed to sit up, sweat beading on her brow as her legs quivered under the strain. Her muscles burned, but her resolve was fierce. "I can't stop now," she muttered, her jaw tight with effort. "I have to keep going." Mia, watching from the corner, stepped forward, her worry etched on her young face. "Mom, please don't push yourself too hard," she pleaded softly. "Take it easy," the physiotherapist urged, her voice steady but firm. Still, Melissa insisted on testing her weight. despite her legs trembling like fragile reeds. Brian and the therapist steadied her carefully. For a fleeting moment she stood, but just as quickly her knees gave way. Brian reacted instantly, catching her in his strong arms. "I've got you," he said, his voice reassuring. "I won't let you fall." Though relieved, Melissa was inconsolable, whispering through her tears, "But I need to do this." The medical team crafted a careful recovery program. Each tiny victory, a slight movement, a firmer grip was met with celebration. Mia remained her mother's fiercest cheerleader, encouraging her through every grueling session. "It's like learning to walk all over again," one therapist explained. "Every small step matters." "But I'll get there, right?" Melissa asked, her voice tinged with exhaustion but still hopeful. As evaluations continued, Brian stepped out of the hospital to arrange for specialized therapy equipment. When he returned, he found Melissa resting while Mia animatedly shared future plans with a nurse. "She's as tough as you," Brian murmured to Mia, his voice low but certain. "She'll make it," Mia replied, her eyes shining with determination. "She never gives up." When Brian's sleek car pulled into the narrow, worn streets of Mia's neighborhood, the sight of their building sent a chill through both of them. The front door was blocked by heavy wooden planks. A glaring eviction notice was nailed at the center. "No," Mia whispered, her voice trembling as she stepped closer. "This can't be happening." Her legs felt like lead, her hands shaking as she clutched Brian's arm. "We'll figure this out," Brian assured her softly, though his own heart sank at the sight. "I promise." "Take it easy, sweetheart," Brian Russell said gently, his voice calm as he tried to ease Mia's panic. But Mia darted toward the entrance, her urgency overpowering her fear. The wooden boards nailed across the doorway were loosely attached, leaving a narrow gap. With some effort, Mia squeezed through. Brian followed, his larger frame struggling to fit into the small space. Inside, the building was eerily silent, a hollow echo of the home it once was. Shadows hung heavy in the air, amplifying the desolation. As they climbed the stairs, eviction notices plastered every wall, their dates stark reminders of the day Mia and Melissa rushed to the hospital. "Our things," Mia whispered, her voice trembling as her fingers reached for the apartment door. The weight of grief broke through as she collapsed into tears. "How can I tell her?" Her voice cracked with sorrow, each word choked with despair. "Let me take a look," Brian said quietly, moving past her to carefully examine the papers. The apartment inside was frozen in time, exactly as they had left it. Dishes sat dirty in the sink, a half-empty coffee cup rested on the table, and Melissa's medications lay scattered across the worn surface. Mia hurried into the small bedroom she'd shared with her mother, only to find more eviction notices strewn across the unmade beds. She sank to the floor, her sobs filling the emptiness around her. Clutching an empty pill bottle, she cried, "I tried so hard. I sold candy. I sold anything I could. And when I couldn't, I took just enough for Mom's medicine. But it wasn't enough. The rent was too much." Brian knelt beside her, his gaze scanning the bills and receipts scattered in a worn shoebox beneath the bed. A knot tightened in his stomach as the sheer cost of the medications became clear. "How can I tell her this?" Mia asked, curling into herself as she hugged her knees. Her voice was small and broken, brimming with despair. "You don't have to tell her right now," Brian said firmly. His voice carried a quiet determination. "Let me handle this." Back at the hospital, Melissa Collins was sitting upright for the first time since her illness had taken its toll. Her legs dangled off the edge of the bed, weak but alive with new energy. "My love," she whispered softly, her arms outstretched toward Mia. "Stay right there," Melissa said, her smile wide and filled with light. Tears streaming down her cheeks, Mia froze in the doorway, her emotions overwhelming her. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. Melissa's first steps were hesitant, her body swaying like a child learning to walk for the first time. She leaned heavily on the bed for balance, each inch forward a monumental effort. Yet, with every step, her movements grew stronger, her confidence more visible. "You're doing it," Mom, Mia cheered, unable to contain her excitement. "Yes, sweetheart," Melissa replied, her own voice filled with emotion. "I'm coming back to you." When Melissa finally reached her daughter, they embraced fiercely, holding each other as tears streamed freely. "My brave little girl," Melissa whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "You gave me the strength to return." Nearby, the specialist observed the scene with quiet reverence. "We'll need to run a few more tests," he said gently, "but I've never seen such a remarkable recovery." Brian, standing close by, felt a lump rise in his throat. He stepped forward, his tone unusually tender. "Melissa," he began, "I have an idea for you both." Melissa turned her gaze toward him, her eyes cautious yet curious. "My house is too big for just me," Brian explained, a kind smile softening his typically serious face. "I'd like you both to come live there with me." Mia's heart soared, the looming worry of eviction momentarily lifting. "Please, Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please say yes." Melissa's expression shifted, disbelief mixing with gratitude. "Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice low and edged with uncertainty. "Because your daughter taught me about a kind of love and courage I've never known before," Brian replied earnestly, "and because I promised to take care of you both." Tears welled in Melissa's eyes, and her voice trembled as she asked, "Are you sure?" "I'm certain," Brian said solemnly. "It's time for all of us to start fresh." The day Melissa was discharged from the hospital felt like the first breath of spring after a harsh winter. Dressed in fresh clothes Brian had provided, she walked down the corridor with steady, determined steps. Mia skipped happily beside her, her excitement radiating from every movement. Brian followed behind with a quiet smile, his expression carrying unspoken relief and contentment. At the hospital's entrance, the doctor, finishing his final instructions, paused to shake Melissa's hand. "This is a case I'll never forget," he said warmly. "You've redefined what's possible in recovery." As they approached Brian's sleek black car, it no longer seemed to Mia like a symbol of power and wealth or a reminder of her past mistakes. Instead, it represented a new beginning, a bridge to a future she'd never dared to imagine. "Ready to see your new home?" Brian asked, catching Melissa's gaze in the rearview mirror. Beyond the towering iron gates, Brian's mansion came into view. The sprawling gardens, vibrant with swaying flowers, took Mia's breath away. "It's like a dream," she murmured, her voice filled with wonder. Melissa Collins held her daughter's hand tightly, her breath catching as she took in the breathtaking sight of the place they'd now call home. "It's like a real castle," Mia whispered, her wide eyes brimming with wonder. At the grand entrance, Melissa hesitated, her gaze lingering on the gleaming marble floors and the sweeping staircase that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. Sensing her unease, Brian Russell rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This place has been empty for too long," he said gently. "It needed life, a family. It needed you." As they explored the house, Mia darted excitedly from room to room, her giggles echoing through the vast halls. Brian had prepared a special room just for her, painted in soft pastel tones and lined with a small bookshelf filled with stories waiting to be discovered. "I wanted to be part of every detail," Brian explained with a warm smile as he watched Mia take in her new space with wide-eyed excitement. Melissa's room, a spacious suite overlooking the lush garden, was equally thoughtful. The calming tones and elegant furnishings reflected a quiet serenity. Through a small adjoining door lay a private office, fully equipped for her physical therapy sessions. "I've thought of everything," Brian said, showing her the specialized equipment. "I want you to have everything you need to recover comfortably." Dinner that evening in the elegant dining room felt both surreal and heartwarming. Brian observed as Mia, with endearing determination, tried to mimic his polished table manners. Melissa guided her gently, her touch filled with love. Watching them, Brian felt a warmth bloom in his chest, a feeling of belonging he hadn't known in years. It's incredible, he thought, how much life can change in just a few days. After dinner, Brian led them to the back garden, where a vine-covered pergola stood bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The sunset painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, casting a serene light over the space. It was the perfect setting for what he had to say. Mia, Brian began, his voice heavy with emotion. There's something important I need to tell you. His words came slowly, each one carrying the weight of his transformation. The successful businessman, once consumed by ambition and status, now spoke with a vulnerability that felt unfamiliar but freeing. Mia, when you tried to steal from me that day, I was a different man, he admitted. To me, you were just a desperate kid, a petty thief, who deserved nothing but scorn. I was wrong, he paused, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that made her heart ache. In that dim alley, you showed me a kind of courage I'd long forgotten. It wasn't the kind that comes from wealth or power, but a bravery born of pure, selfless love. He drew a deep breath and continued, there you were, a child with so little, willing to face anything to save your mother. And there I was, a man with everything, living a hollow life devoid of purpose. Your tears that day weren't for yourself. They were for her. They forced me to see what truly mattered. Brian's voice softened, his tone laced with gratitude. My old ideas of success, money, status, control, they all feel empty now. You taught me that true wealth lies in the relationships we build, the love we nurture, and the resilience we find in the darkest moments. Watching your mother fight for her life made me realize that all the riches in the world mean nothing if I can't use them to make a difference. He looked at Melissa and Mia, his voice trembling slightly. Mia, you stole more than my wallet that day. You stole my heart. And with it you stripped away my arrogance, my pride, and my blindness. In their place, you gave me a new purpose, a new family, and a chance to build something real. Tears streamed down Melissa and Mia's faces as his words settled over them. Slowly, Mia stood, her small frame trembling with emotion, and wrapped her arms tightly around Brian. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for standing by us. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, but the garden remained aglow with the warm light of lanterns dotting the pathways. Brian reached out to help Melissa to her feet, pleased to see her moving with greater ease. Well, he said, a genuine grin spreading across his face, I think it's time you see the winter garden. Melissa, I think you'll love it. There's plenty of room for a true flower haven. Mia clung to Melissa's hand on one side and Brian's on the other. Together they strolled through the softly lit garden, the night air filled with the chirping of crickets and the faint scent of blooming flowers. Brian looked up at the sparkling sky, his heart full as he mused aloud, sometimes we have to feel completely lost before we can find the path we were always meant to take. Melissa glanced at her daughter, then at Brian, her heart swelling with gratitude. In that moment, she knew this was more than a house. It was a home, a place where they could start anew, together. The chirping of crickets and the sweet fragrance of night-blooming flowers surrounded them as they strolled toward the winter garden. Melissa glanced at her daughter, now beaming with happiness, and then at Brian, the man who had unexpectedly transformed their lives. Life truly is full of surprises, she thought, giving a gentle squeeze to the hands of her newfound family. You know, Brian said, pausing to gaze at the rising moon, I'm beginning to think it wasn't me who saved you. It was you who saved me. The days after Melissa and Mia moved into Brian's mansion were a mix of challenges and discoveries, punctuated by moments of profound joy. The once quiet, imposing house now brimmed with laughter and a sense of connection that had been missing for far too long. Mom, look. I planted the first daisy seeds just like we planned, Mia exclaimed, her small hands dusted with soil as she proudly displayed the freshly prepared flower bed. Melissa's face lit up, her heart swelling with gratitude and joy. It was hard to believe that just weeks ago, she couldn't imagine her daughter looking this carefree and happy. You're doing amazing, my little flower, Melissa said with a warm smile. This garden will be the most beautiful we've ever had. Brian approached, watching the scene with a quiet, contented smile. Mia, you really have a talent for this, he said, his tone brimming with affection. Pretty soon we might need even more space for all the flowers you'll be planting. Do you really think so? Mia asked, her eyes wide with excitement, because I was already thinking of planting sunflowers by the gate. "That's a fantastic idea," Brian replied with a soft laugh. It struck him how natural it felt to laugh again, a sound that seemed both familiar and completely new. One sunny afternoon, the three of them worked together to build a tree swing. "Hang on tight," Brian said with a playful grin. "I'll test it out first." "Will it break?" Mia asked, her laughter mixing with a hint of concern. "If it does, I'll make an even better one," Brian promised. He eased onto the swing and gave it a gentle push, relieved when it held steady. Soon, Mia was soaring high into the air as Melissa stood behind her, giving gentle pushes. It was a simple moment, yet so perfect, that Brian felt a warm tug in his heart, a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. Later that evening, Mia's excitement filled the dining room as she shared ideas for the house and garden. "We could paint a mural with flowers and animals on the entrance wall. What do you think?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with creativity. Melissa glanced at Brian, who nodded enthusiastically. "I think it's a wonderful idea, my little artist," he said. "Tomorrow we can start planning it together." "Yes, it'll be the most beautiful mural ever," Mia exclaimed, her joy lighting up the room. Melissa reached across the table, her hand resting on Brian's. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. Brian returned her gaze, feeling a warmth that spread through his chest. "There's no need to thank me," he replied. "You both brought light back into my life." As weeks turned into months, Brian's mansion transformed. The once silent halls now echoed with dreams, laughter, and the unfolding story of a family finding its way back to joy. Melissa often paused to look at her daughter and Brian, her heart full. This is only the beginning, she thought, feeling a deep sense of contentment. With her recovery complete, Melissa threw herself into community projects and social causes, working alongside Brian and Mia to give back. The hardships they had endured inspired her to help others find hope. She organized fundraisers and support programs for struggling families, her genuine warmth drawing people in and making each event a success. Brian, too, experienced a profound change. With Mia as his partner, he launched the New Chance Foundation, an initiative that provided shelter, education, and meals for children in need. The foundation grew rapidly, gaining support from friends and colleagues alike. "Mr. Russell, 3 new children arrived at the shelter today," a coordinator informed him during a visit. "Excellent," Brian replied, pride evident in his voice. "Let's make sure they have everything they need." Mia quickly became a leader within the foundation, her compassion shining as she greeted each new child with a warmth that reflected her own journey. Melissa often watched her daughter from a distance, her heart swelling with pride. Melissa's role within New Chance expanded as well. She organized activities, guided children with care and encouragement, and inspired them with her words. "You can achieve anything you set your heart on," she told the kids at a meeting. "Believe in yourselves and work hard. I'll be here to help you every step of the way." The mansion had become more than just a home. It was now a haven of hope and love, a place where new beginnings flourished. With every flower they planted, every meal they shared, and every child they helped, their bond deepened. Together they proved that from the darkest moments, something beautiful and enduring could grow. Brian's routine shifted too. He traded lengthy boardroom meetings and lavish business dinners for afternoons spent at shelters and local events. The reputation he once carried rooted in wealth and status began to evolve, now echoing with compassion and generosity. "I never thought I'd see this day," Brian admitted to an old friend during a charity event. "Mia and Melissa changed my entire outlook on life," his friend smiled warmly. "And because of that, Brian, you've changed so many lives in return." The mansion, once a stark symbol of wealth, had transformed into a home filled with warmth and love. Its grand walls now reverberated with the laughter of visiting children, who joined reading afternoons and shared meals lovingly hosted by Melissa. Mia often took the lead during tours of the estate, eagerly sharing how her life had changed. "You wouldn't believe how it used to be," she'd say, her smile radiant. "Now, This place is more than a mansion, it's truly home. On quiet evenings, the family often gathered under the stars in the sprawling garden. As the cool breeze rustled through the trees, their connection deepened with every shared moment. "Do you think we can do more?" Mia asked one night, her bright eyes filled with hopeful determination. Brian exchanged a glance with Melissa, their bond unspoken yet profound. "Always, sweetheart," he replied. "And we'll do it together." Melissa squeezed their hands, her smile soft and confident. "There's nothing we can't accomplish when we stand together," she said. The New Chance Foundation flourished, and its success brought Brian invitations to speak at conferences. At one event, he stood before a captivated audience and shared his journey of transformation. "It's not wealth that defines a person," he said, his voice steady and heartfelt. "It's the way they use what they have to make the world a better place." Melissa also began sharing her story, her resilience resonating deeply with listeners. "Even in life's darkest moments," she said during a panel discussion, "there's always a light that can guide us. Often that light is found in the people we choose to love and support." From a distance, the joyful voices of children echoed, singing songs of hope and resilience, a promise of brighter tomorrows. The family's journey, marked by struggles, perseverance, and triumph, became a beacon of hope for others. As they reflected on their incredible story, Brian addressed their growing community with gratitude and optimism. "We hope this story washes away your fatigue and ignites a flame of hope within you," he said. "Share your thoughts with us, and let's create a strong, enduring community where everyone feels connected and supported." Melissa added with a kind smile, "Life's challenges can be overwhelming, but together we can build something beautiful. Your stories and voices matter, and we want to hear them." Finally, Brian looked toward the horizon, a smile of confidence on his face. "Don't miss the incredible stories we're bringing to you soon," he said. "We're here to share selections full of depth, meaning, and hope. See you there." This story has truly been a journey of transformation, filled with hope, love, and second chances. It began with a desperate young girl named Mia and her mother, Melissa, who fought against overwhelming odds just to survive. But through their struggles, they found unexpected help in Brian, a wealthy businessman who, at first, was hardened by his success and indifference. Through their bond, Brian learned that true wealth isn't measured in money, but in the relationships we build and the love we share. From the cold walls of Brian's mansion to the warm home they've now built together, the story has shown us that no matter how dark the past, there is always a light guiding us toward a brighter future. As Mia planted her first daisy seeds in the garden, and as Melissa began her recovery, we witnessed a family coming together against all odds, proving that even the most fractured lives can be healed with compassion and understanding. We invite you to share this incredible story with those who need a little inspiration and hope in their lives. If you found something meaningful in this journey, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your loved ones. Your support helps us reach even more people who can benefit from these stories of resilience. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. How did it impact you? What did you find most moving about Mia, Melissa, and Brian's journey? Leave your feelings and comments below, and let's continue to build a community of support and love. Together, we can make a difference.